question. We'll start the discussion. We will start from the lady over there for Michaela.
Thank you. My name is Ulrike Röhr. I'm from GENANET, Focal Point Gender Environment Sustainability in Germany. So my question is to Michaela. I'm aware that everybody wants to have an easy accessible index, so that's a given situation, but I'm really concerned about the information provided by these EGI. It was launched in Poland last year at the UNFCCC COP. So let's take the example of Poland, therefore. Poland is ranking top in the EGI in the environmental sector, a country with one of the worst environmental performances, and in particular in the area of climate change, doing its very best in watering down every target on emission reductions and so on. So the question is, why is Poland first? Why do they have so many women in decision-making positions in an area which is ranking lowest in their own policy perception? And my real question is, mustn't the Gender and Environment Index go beyond quantitative data on women's participation in decision-making and look at the quality of the policy? So does it make a difference if there is a high percentage of women in decision-making and environmental policy, and which difference is it?
So thank you for your questions. Now, why does Poland come up so nicely on the Environment and Gender Index? As we said, this index is not really discussing environmental performance of of countries, right? So if that is the case, then you would use the Environmental Performance Index, for example, of Yale and Columbia University. And there you will see that Poland, in fact, does not do that well. So on that scatter plot, you will see that while Poland empowers women in the environmental arena, this index does not tell you about the performance of the countries on that topic. And in fact, there is no single composite indicator, no single index that will give the solution to all the problems. So we really have to see every index separately, relatively in its narrow focus. So there it was empowerment of women in environmental arena, and that's why Poland comes up quite nicely. But it doesn't mean that Poland is an environmentally sustainable country. So it should be seen maybe with another index. And the next question, when you said about quality, yes, quality is very, very important. However, it's not always easy to benchmark quality results. And as we said, all these aggregate measures try to attract attention. And in order to attract attention, you have to base it on some quantitative measures. That's why there is the choice on the quantity rather than the quality. Quality is and should remain highly important. But it's not easy to benchmark countries based on qualities, because then... Okay. And then other criteria enter into place. So yes, I agree with you, but it's not easy to put it in any index.
I would like to add to the other question is, I'm surprised that there was no inclusion of pollution in it and measures of pollution, and because we can measure this, you show the GDP, but also we could measure the differences between the effects of exposure to pollution between women and men. So I'm just asking you whether one could have an EGI plus where would include this information.
The EGI plus.
Oops, sorry.
Maybe. Yes. Okay. So the EGI plus that will come in the next years will have more indicators there. I'm not sure if they have on policy because on pollution issues, because I don't know if this sex disaggregated data exists. But I know that they will change slightly the framework in order to include new indicators that they are working on.
Thank you for this extremely interesting presentation, which showed us the application in real research of sex and gender analysis. And in particular, we have seen 3 applications of mostly sex-related variables, and in one case, more gender-related variables. And I was wondering how would it be interesting, even, of course, if very difficult from many points of view, also the institutional and organizational one, to have both sex and gender variables included. I think, for instance, the very interesting research presented by Jordan Ramsey about psychiatric disorders, where of course also gender variables and social variables are so important, and could also explain some interesting variations in the ability to predict the disease of biomarkers, and that's the observation. I wonder if you consider this, or if you think it could be possible.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. And really, it all kind of comes down to data. How much data we have on each of the cohorts kind of determines how much we can consider all of these different lifestyle variables as well. So in some of the cohorts, like the Netherlands study of depression and anxiety, we have a ton of different lifestyle and demographic variables that we can consider. And so then we can consider the question of gender a bit more. And then I think as we continue to kind of fund more of these studies where we recognize the importance of these different variables, we will continue to get more data with these variables, and we'll be able to analyze them a bit more.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I thought this was a great panel, very interesting. The title of the panel is on sexual dimorphism, and an emphasis on dimorphism. And I thought it was interesting because we heard in a variety of the talks that obviously chromosomal status is more than simply XX or XY. Yet, for example, Jordan, in your study, you moved to a binary comparison of male and female. And we see this quite a bit in the study of sex differences. Yet, it's not always clear what that dimorphism is based on. Is it chromosomal status, or is it something else, i.e., how someone is presented and the assumptions that you're making about them as being male or female? And I think this is an important point in terms of our science, that our science of humans, we don't really necessarily study this to the degree that we need to. And so I'm just wondering, Jordan, in your study, on what basis you made the decision on the comparison of males and females? Was it chromosomal status, or was it something else?
Yeah, so in this study, it was chromosomal status, so the biological sex of the individual who presented with the condition. But so again, because we don't have the data to kind of look more into that, we can't do that yet. But I mean, even in terms of diagnosis, kind of it's been brought up that there may be biases just in terms of the psychiatrists who are evaluating a male versus a female with depression, for example. That can also come into these, maybe that's also reflected in the molecular signatures that we're getting as well. So it's very, very complex, and really we just need more data to be able to analyze that specific aspect of it. And I think now that we're kind of seeing more and more of these studies, I mean, these are kind of been published in the past 2 years, maybe, kind of studies. So now that we see these studies saying that sex is very important in psychiatry, maybe now we will start to collect more of that data that may be relevant to try and answer some of those questions.
Yeah, if I may comment on that, I mean, of course you are looking at the gene expression, looking at the specific chromosome, but now there is the huge world of the epigenetic control, and so this is not yet into the picture in your case, right? But this could affect a lot the coming out of the study, because you could have that environment at that point could create another, another element that would affect the expression of some of these genes. And in fact, when you spoke at the end about the personalized medicine, another term that is very, on fashion now, personalized really means, for few people, if not even only one, So I really was wondering the changes that you saw, or the cluster that you made, represented which percentage of the patients that you studied? You know, for each gene that was upregulated or downregulated, was this what in the population you examined? Which percentage?
So if you remember maybe the distribution from yesterday of the different heights of males and females, so that's mostly what we looked at. And so we do definitely see this, huge gray area where, males and females may show an overlap in this up or down regulation. Generally, we often use fold changes. To kind of, measure that indirectly. And in general, in psychiatric disorders, we don't see huge fold changes in these molecules. Usually we'll see, 10 to 20%.
Thank you. Other questions from the floor? One over here. Please.
I just would like to sorry, I am Claudine Junier, I am a professor of genetics. I just would like to have a more optimistic point of view concerning the Y chromosome. There were two papers in last April in Nature showing that the decay of the Y chromosome is not that important for the specific genes on the Y chromosome, and especially those that represent 36 pair of paralog with the X chromosome. And these are very important because they comprise genes that are involved in the epigenetic machinery. And therefore, from the beginning of life and throughout life, because they are expressed all the time, they put on very specific epigenetic marks in the male and the female. So that's quite important, I think, to mention. So that's work from David Page and another group that appeared in April in Nature. So if you are interested, thank you.
I would just thank you for this interesting comment. And this paper I referred to was, of course, a few years old, and it was on the SRY gene. So I think we don't have to worry.
Other questions? More questions for this panel? Doesn't work. Yes?
I would like Lars to maybe comment or speculate whether this skewing of the X chromosome inactivation might be related to loss of stem cells with old age.
I don't have a clue. I don't know if anyone does, actually. But why not? Loss of stem cells at old age. Yeah, possibly.
So I read that apparently aging is related, how we age, or that we age. That's it's related to the fact that we run out of the supply of stem cells.
Well, another comment I have is on autoimmune disorders. So, although they are more frequent in women, right? All kinds of autoimmune disorder, there are still, patients that are male patients. So, is this related always to the X chromosome, also in male, or there is some contribution of the Y? Do you know? I feel that I don't know this.
I think that your question is very appropriate, but there is something about the X chromosome that is related to the autoimmune disorders, but there must be hundreds of other cues to why we do get the autoimmune disorders. And also, we should remember that there might be a bias in diagnosis like we have seen in the heart disorders, because it's a female disorder, and then they may be underdiagnosed in males, especially perhaps the autoimmune disorders. So it's important to be in mind the physician-related bias in this.
Yeah, but if I may comment, I guess we don't want to discuss, I mean, being a biologist, I would like to discuss this more, but this is not really what we want to do here. I guess that this panel wanted to point out, as I said at the beginning, that we are different. Of course, we know that we are different. But one important point here would be to find in which way we can exploit the difference for having real gender taken into account in all the, in our society, in evaluating science, in everyday life. So I think that one important take-home message should be, we can go on discussing stem cell, and I would be very pleased, by the way, and and all kind of disorders. But maybe we should also have a discussion on in which way women can be more affirmative in their way of thinking, behaving, working, so to have more success than what they have now. So this could be a topic of discussion if someone from the panel or from the floor wants to elaborate on that. Yes, please.
I think that looking at sexual dimorphism is very important, because if you compare males and females, then you will pinpoint genes that are important to protect one sex or the other. And so that's a good way to do it. But the other thing, which is, I think, very important in protecting women, is also in protecting their health. And we know that side effects for drugs, for example, we find 1.5 to 2 times more in women. So it means that if women were also in a better health, that would also improve their chance of success in their work, or in everyday life. And so I think this is an important part, health of women compared with men, but also with men who are a little bit neglected in some diseases also. This would be important to improve the capabilities of women in every aspect.
What you're saying is very true, as is true for many clinical studies that, as you know well performed, with the officially gender unbiased, but basically gender bias attitude, because they were mostly on male, and then you know that all the side effects, as you said, were studying basically in men. So it's the gender issue is for treatment, for clinical trial, for many aspects of medicine. Now, is there any other comment from the floor? Otherwise, one last one over there.
Just a quick question. I was very fascinated by the data presented and was wondering whether the findings as presented now give any other perspective on development of the whole transgender issues and intersex issues, whether there's anything known about that.
Can you comment? No?
Again, a very difficult question, but I think we should acknowledge or think more about this third sex. And we are binary in our thinking. We think about men and women, and some men are more womanized than women, and vice versa. We have to introduce that in somehow in this debate, but it's not very easy. And also, someone told me yesterday that we are talking about the majority. This is a small minority in the big issue. So it's complex to add it to the discussion, actually. But I think, like you said, this session brings up the differences and what we can maybe do with those differences in the better way somehow. But it is far from the complex gender.
Yeah, so I mean, this problem was cited also by the Director General before, saying that we have to look at all kind of diversity, also, you know, physical diversity and so on. So I don't think that when we speak about gender, we just are referring or want to refer to female and male, but to all kind of, let's say, minority or differences or difficulties. So I guess this is a good way to close the panel, keeping our mind open and knowing that there are many other problems we want to solve with the Gender Summit. And I would like to thank the speakers for a very, very interesting presentation and you as a fantastic audience. Thank you. And coffee.